Okay. Reb Naftali, we're holding on 105 by the first Mishnah. Is that what you got? You got ahead. Okay. We think Hashem they were able to learn Torah every day. That's what we're learning. We should have the base in English immediately. We're learning Lili Nishmas of Golda Baskar Yamin and the son of Zeb Ben Tzvian. And for Foshleim Mikav and David Ben Sarah. And for Gedalia Getzel Zakali Yosef and Fegat Zipira. Okay. And for Moshe. How you doing? It's swollen.
Swollen. It's like,
Wow.
again, I held it tight and I fell, so I was able to close it. I need stitches, but it's just one big mess there.
Wow.
No.
Sue the city.
Well, that's what we're talking about. We have to go back to reenact with cameras.
Makabel Sadame Chavera. We would always try. We would always ask my father. We sue the city. You know, the thing is, it says you can, but it's not worth it. Makabel Sadame Chavera. Here we're talking about we're always dealing with someone who's working the land. He's either leasing the land or he's a sharecropper. And like we learned from our Papa before, that the following Mishnayos is only going to be one or the other. So this Mishnah over here is only dealing with someone that's leasing the land and is giving a set payment. He's leasing the land. He doesn't want to weed. He's not taking care of the land for the future, for right now and for the future. Amalai, he says to the owner, he says, what do you care if I weed or not? I'm gonna pay my rent. Yeah. I'm paying anyway. But you should only be worried about getting your payment. You're getting your payment. It's a fixed payment. Right. Yeah, if it would be a sharecropper, then they would say, I'm not going to get my share properly because the weeds are going to take the nutrients. And so, yeah, so he tells him back, in Shaiman we don't listen to the claim of the tenant, of the guy that's doing the work, because the owner can say, you're only here for 1 year. Tomorrow you're going to leave. And there's going to be the weeds, the grasses are going to be growing. And it's not going to, you don't care about that. You only care about the time that you're there. Now the Gemara says, the Gemara adds in, let's say he says, well, when I'm done, I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to plow over the whole land. So all the weeds that are there are just going to get plowed in. So that is a good point. But the owner can respond back. He says, but when you're going to pay me in these little kernels that weren't able to grow to their fullest because the weeds were there that were taking the nutrients. They trash it. And they say, don't worry, I'll clean it up at the end. So the whole time, the owner is saying, yeah, but you're making a mess. You're making a mess. Look, I'm paying the rent. When I'm done, and so the guy's saying, yeah, but you're paying me with the produce that's growing, which is not quality produce because you have all the weeds over there. So, Yamalei is Avninala Chiti Mishuka. See, the guy's going to tell him, yeah, but don't worry about that because I'm going to buy you other wheat from the marketplace. It's going to be quality wheat. I don't have to pay you from the wheat that I'm growing here in this field. No, I want wheat from my field. I don't like the other wheat, Santa. I want this grain. I want the grain from my field. He said, well, I'll weed the area that's going to be your payment. That area, I'll clean it up. But you're giving my property a bad name. I was going to say, oh, the one that grows wild, that one. So, Vatanan, problem is that that's not what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah said, the Mishnah said the problem is that it's going to grow grasses. Now you're telling me it has to do with the name, or it doesn't have to do with that. It says, Elam Mishum Darmalei, Bizra de Nafal Nafal. Really, what he means to say is that it's going to grow grasses. What he means is, even if you're going to plow it later, but the plowing will only undo what already has taken root. You'll rip that up and you'll push it back in, and now it's not going to grow. But what about the seeds that grew from those grasses? They're going to fall, and they'll plant themselves, and they're going to grow after the plowing. The seeds you can't plow under. The seeds are going to fall and grow. So yeah, basically, if you let the weeds grow, the seeds are going to spread out, and it's just a problem. You have to weed it. You have to pull the weeds out, so the seeds don't fall. That's a big job.
From school, all I used
to but weeds are like weeds, they're undesirable plants.
Take them out on the shirt.
Not the seeds just grow more of the same.
Right. So the weeds, when they grow big, they also grow seeds. And the seeds will spread everywhere. So if you don't weed them, and you claim that, don't worry, I'm going to plow it later, but the seeds are everywhere. So
where's the mulch? To put down something so that there aren't any weeds to grow. It's probably too much work.
Yeah. It's a big field. It's not a garden. Yeah, he doesn't have to pay with the produce. He's not allowed to pay with other things, but this owner is saying, no, I want to be paid. Yeah, I don't know if the Gemara is concluding with that though.
That was the deal. Seems like it was very interesting.
Right. But he still wants his own field. Still wants it from his own field. Yeah. Okay. Let's see the next Mishnah. Right. It's different when it comes from your own field. Now we're switching who's in the field. Now we're dealing with the Oris, the sharecropper. No switch. So that Mishnah before was a lease, now it's a sharecropper. The use is the same word, the field, for whatever reason, didn't produce. But you see, the sharecropper now, he's saying, it's not worth my efforts to work this field. It's not producing. Let me just leave it and go do, business management. Sometimes you have to say, like, okay, yeah, this is enough. Let me move on to the next venture. So he wants to leave it, but the owner is saying, you're going to leave it, I'm not going to get my portion. I want my portion. So we have to look at how much is it actually producing. So it says if it can produce enough to make a pile, it's like how big is a piece of string, right? Make a pile. So chayav l'tapelba, then the person has to continue working. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda, my kids for v'kri, what's a sort of set amount is a pile? What it really means is that it has to be, if it produces enough to have seed for the following year, which they call that kedei nefila, enough to let it fall back in to grow, then that is sufficient that you should need to continue working.
Could you maybe let the sharecropper just leave and not actually pay you?
Yeah, but he can do that, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants to get whatever he can, and the sharecropper is saying it's not worth it for you.
Yeah, it's just
No, the sharecropper. The sharecropper gives a percentage of the produce. He doesn't pay the sharecropper. Sharecropper grows.
No, the owner pays the sharecropper.
No, the owner doesn't pay the sharecropper. The sharecropper produces. That's a discussion. It doesn't always. We had before that it doesn't always. It works in two different ways. It could be this, it could be that. But this is sort of like let's say Uber owns the car. I think sometimes they do nowadays. They own the car. You take the car, and you just give Uber a percentage of what you make.
Okay.
So the sharecropper isn't getting paid; he's just doing work, and he's going to take some of the produce, and some of the produce percentage of the produce, and give to the owner.
By the way, the analogies, Uber charges a certain amount for each day rental, so you have to make sure you make much more than that it's worth.
Okay, Uber's not a good example.
Otherwise, like the case here, the guy won't do the field. He doesn't have to pay the percentage of the field.
Right. Like exactly what's going on here. So, Taner Rabbanon, who started in a Bryce. The field didn't produce. If you can make a pile out of it, then he has to continue working with it because it is producing enough. Because this is in the agreement, in the sharecropper agreement. It says like this: Anna, Oikim will get up, the Anir and plow, the Ezra and plant, the Echtzeit harvest, the Amir is bundled, the Edesh and thresh, the Idri and winnow, the Oikim karya kadamach, and I'll make it into a pile in front of you. The Teiseyant, and you will come, the Titel Palga, and you'll take half. And I, with my efforts and with my expenses, Nafkas Yadi is Palga, I'll also take half. Okay. So what is that? How is that a proof? Because he says I'm going to make it into a pile. How much is the pile? Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says he's a later Meir in Eretz Yisrael. You can stick the shovel that's used for the winnowing, like sort of like a flat shovel that we use to throw it into the air. If you can put that into the pile and it gets lost in the, can't see it in the pile. No, I'm sorry. That it can stand up in the pile. That's the first answer. That it can stand. You have to be able to stick the shovel in and it can stand. It won't be a pile big enough. It won't be able to stand.
A shovel?
A rachas is a shovel, I think. What does it say? Yeah. Yeah, it's a flat shovel.
I was just imagining pitchforks.
Yeah. The Gemara has a question. Let's say it stands up, but it's sticking out on the sides. What's the din over there? Tashma, Rabavo says, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina explained it to me. If the part that gets inserted into the pile doesn't see the sun, it means it has to be totally covered, then that's acceptable. So it can't be sticking out. Itzmar. We have a statement of Amiraim. Levi Amar. Levi was the first generation Amira. That's a rachas. That's a wooden winnowing shovel. Yeah, it's sort of like flat. They have different types of shovels. What does winnowing do? Winnowing is when you've already crushed the husks on top of the grain. So you take all the grain and you throw it into the air. You let the wind blow away the chaff. And when it falls back down, then you have just a pure grain with some little peels. So after that, you have to do butter.
Two priests in the rabbi.
What was that?
Oh yeah,
So
like
that
throw the
says
money up,
He
whatever
draws
comes down.
a line. Whatever goes on one side goes to church, the other side is his pay. The other reverend says, "Oh, I do the same thing." He says, "I do a square. Whatever I throw it up. Whatever goes outside a square goes to church, etc." And the rabbi goes, "I do a circle. I throw it up. I say, God, keep whatever you want. Everything goes to close on it." Come on, I've only told you.
It's in my list. I could.
There was one with the funeral, where they put money into the funeral, into the coffin. And the rabbi comes along and he says, just write the check for the whole amount and takes out the. So okay. Levi is the first generation Amira, student of Rebbe. He says that it needs to be shalish saw, and that's the size of this pile. 3 saw. Each saw is 144 eggs. I don't know what that's going to be. 288. That's going to be another 22. Said 422. 432. 432. Yeah. Really good. 432. Yeah, that's approximately the size. Okay. The Beit Rabbi Yanai Amar Sasayim. Rabbi Yanai says it's a little less than that. It's 2 saw, 244 eggs size. Amar Shlakish says, Sayim Shamru Chutz Min Haitzah. It's not just what it's going to produce. You have to first, you get the pile. Then you have to subtract what you paid in expenses. You have to take that up. And then what's left has to be a sasayim. That's going to be the amount that is still considered worthwhile working. And on Hassam, we learned in the Mishnah over there. So, yeah, we're getting a little bit of sidetrack. So it says, it has over here, Pritze Zaysim. Pritze Zaysim are parrots. Parrots is a pritza. It's like a woman that's immodest. It's considered a pritza. So this is unruly zaysim. Olives that are wild olives. We'll see in a minute what they mean. Anavim. You'll see that coming up. Pritzi zaysim anavim, unruly olives and unruly grapes. Beishamay metaman, Beisil matarin. Hillel says that they're tahar because they're not really edible, so it's not considered food. Food becomes tamei, but this is not really considered food. Beishamai says no, it's still considered food, and it becomes tamei. But the Gemara asks, "My peritze zaysim, what does it mean? These unruly olives?" Ravuna rishoy zaysim. When it says, "Oh, these are wicked olives," wicked, not in the sense that like the vernacular that we say, oh, this is wicked good. Rabbi Yosef, Mikra, what is the pasuk there where we see that pritze means this? It says b'nei pritze amchi nasalam chazain v'nichshalu. The unruly of your nation will try to set up a navi sheker and they'll stumble. Chazain is a navi. Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak Mihalcha v'Hilel ben Parat Shefich Dam gave birth to a murderer. Son that's a murder. Okay, so we're talking about these olives or grapes that don't really mature. That's the wicked or the immature. That's the way this Gemara takes it. Right? They never matured. So how much Kamar Pritzization, how much of them would be considered that it would be edible according to Beis Shammai? Or where the machlekes is. So Rabbi Lezer Reimer Arbas Kaban Lakaira. If they only produce 4 kav of oil for an entire press, you do the whole press and it's only 4 kav for kaira is the beam they would put on the press. For Rabbi Yanai Amar Sasayim kaira, if they only produce 2 sa for 1 press. Now 2 sa is going to be 3 times 4 kavim because the sa is 6 kav. So who is the first opinion? Rabbi Lazar. It's Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas. He says 4 kavim per kaira, and Rabbi Yanai says 12 kavim per kaira, which is 3 times this amount. Sasayim he calls it. Like Pligi, and the Gemara says, but there's actually no machlekes here. This is a place where they have 1 core per press, per bag. And this they put the olives in the bag. And this is a place where they have 3 koren per turns out, I did a calculation before, kor is 30 sa. Turns out that from 30 sa, it's 30, the way it works over here is you get 1 ounce per 45 for olive oil. We take 45 olives to get 1 little olive size. Because if you put in, let's say you put in a kor, 30 sa. So how many kav is 30 sa? 6 kav is a sa. How much is going to be 30? How much is it? 180. 180. So 4 kav is what you're going to get out of 180 kav. Now is 4 1 out of 45? Yeah, because 180, 90, and half is 45. So it's 1 out of 45. That means the way the ratio of olives to oil is 45 to 1. Does that make sense?
You can grind the leaves, you grind it up, you need this much leaves, and you get this much powder. Same idea.
Yeah. Okay. Tzadon Rabbanan. Tzadon Abraisa. Getting into a discussion of Tum and Tara. A little bit Elon Shekaychira. If a Zav and a person that's Tar go up on a tree, and the problem is that because the tree is weak, so it's considered that the Zav is resting on the person that's Tar, or the person that's Tar is resting on the person that's, because it's like a seesaw. So, sucha, not a sukkah, sucha, shekaychera, or a branch that has that's also weak. That's tame. The person that was Tar is now tame because of he was resting on the he's supporting the zav or whatever. They're supporting each other, so therefore he's tame. What does it mean a tree that has that has bad strength? It's weak. If you can't carve out of the trunk, remember the giving tree? You can't carve out of the trunk enough to make a bowl that's the size of a quarter kav. Quarter kav is 24 eggs, so 6 eggs. That little thing that can hold 6 eggs, then that's considered weak. What's considered a branch that's weak? Because anything that you can conceal in your palm, you grasp it, you can hold the whole thing. We learned over there in always someone that's walking in a besa pras. Besa pras is different possibilities, but one of them is that there's a grave that was there that got plowed over, and the field that had a grave in it got plowed, so there's bones that are scattered. So someone's walking there al gabi avonim, and he's stepping on stones. So then he's tummy. If he's walking on these stones, and so really, if he's walking on the stones, then he should be fine. But if the person or the animal doesn't have the strength to catch, no, if he's on the stones, he's not fine, because he may end up touching the bone, moving the bone. If he moves the bone, that would make him tummy. If he would be on top of an animal that's walking on it, he should be fine. If he's on top of a cat being carried by a person, he should be fine. Over here, because the animal is weak, it's considered like he himself is the one that's moving it, the bones that are there. What is the give me a description of the person that's weak, that's considered like he's moving those bones. It's so heavy that the person is on the bottom is so weak that his knees are banging, right? So then his knees are shaking. So then that's considered weak. What's considered an animal that's weak? any animal that releases the excrement while you're riding on it, so that's considered because of the strain. Listen, because of the strain, that's considered weak. Amid Rabbi Yanai says another halacha letfila dalit kabin. When it comes to davening and when it comes to tefillin, it's 4 kabin. But the reason why we got into this is because Rabbi Yanai happened to mention that it's sasayim is the size of the pile. So we say, oh, Rabbi Yanai, let me tell you some other things from Rabbi Yanai. So Rabbi Yanai says that it's sasayim l'kaira. It's the amount that it produces the if they become tamei. Want to hear Rabbi Yanai? I have another thing from Rabbi Yanai. I have the following. Okay. But we had Rabbi Yanai about the tree, that is to hollow it out. And then Rabbi Yanai over here says that it gives, that the animal releases its excrement. Now Rabbi Yanai says, Latfila ulatfila and dalit kabin. There's 4 kabin for something that has to do with tefillah and tefillin. Mar says, Mahi, what are you talking about? The Tanya was taught in a brisa, and if someone is carrying a load on his shoulders, Yezman tefillah, comes time for davening. Pachas midalit kabin, if it's less than 4 kav, mafshin la'achayrav mispal. You can just let it go to the back, hang down in the back while he's still holding on to it, and he can daven. That's considered acceptable. But if it's abar kabin, if it's 4 kabin, it weighs 4 kav, then you can't daven with it and take it off. It's like a backpack. Every backpack you're supposed to put it down. 4 kav. 4 kav would be a kav itself is 24 eggs. So 4 kav would be 96 eggs. It's like those boxes. How many pounds?
Yeah, big eggs.
Can anybody give me an answer like
30 pounds? 30 pounds. 30 pounds? I don't know. It's a regular school kids backpack with all their books until they learn that they can leave it in school. They don't really need it to carry it. They never do homework anyway. They just take it home with at the end of the year they realize, I never did homework once. They take the bags home every day. Your students don't have books. Do they schlep books around? They have these little phones. Right. Okay. So you're supposed to put down the tefillin mahi. What about tefillin? The Tanya was starting a brisa and if someone's carrying a load on his head, it's tefillin braysh, but he has his tefillin there. Then my tefillin right says if the tefillin are being squished, so then it's usher. Then you can't have that on your head. You either take the tefillin off or take the load off. But if it's not getting squished, then it's mutter. What type of load are we talking about? If it's 4 calves, 96 eggs, then it's getting squished. Hana the Reb Chia was taught in the yeshiva of Reb Chia. I'm sorry. Reb Chia taught. If someone is carrying fertilizer on his head, it's tefillin b'reisha, but he also has his tefillin on his head. This person should not just put it on the side. He shouldn't put the tefillin on his waist. They should know because that's disgrace. He should put it on his arm, but tefillin where it belongs. Okay, should tie it on his arm. Now, is he tying the head tefillin on his arm? That's what it seems like. Mishum the Bei Shila Amru in the Bei Shila said, not only the weight of 4 kav shouldn't be on your head, but even the bag of the tefillin zekel, the tefillin bag shouldn't be on your head. Because when you're wearing tefillin, you shouldn't have anything on your head. Unless it's a yam. No loads. There's a Gemara where Nachman by Yitzchak, his mother covered his head. It's gonna be a thief or something.
Something about like how men can be tired.
Really, it was There's something about getting married and covering the head. Like wearing the talus over the head.
They were yarmulkes in those things. Official.
Not by Yitzchak, probably the others didn't. It says Vayetzi Yaakov. Yaakov, of course he wore a yarmulke. How would he walk without a yarmulke?
No more could feel like.
When they were married, they covered that as my tradition. But they would cover their head with something,
That's both men and.
The women covered their hair definitely after they were married. Yeah. Could be. I don't know. So we know because they uncovered their head when they uncovered her hair when she was the Saita. Because they uncovered it. Abaya. Abaya says, how much is this? Abaya responds, how big is I feel a river the Pumpadisa, even if it's a quarter of of what they used in Pumpadisa, that should also not be on the head when he's wearing tefillin. Okay, Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, my kitzvah. Kri elam yishbek kedei nefila. What are you telling me about the tree, about the pile? Rather, it means the amount of seed that's used to plant in the following year. That's how much that would be already worth it. That the sharecropper should have to continue working the field. How much seed is that? We'll stop early. Rabami Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Rabami Amar Rabbi Yechanan. That's how it works. Rabami says in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Abba Sain Likur. Okay, now, if the field produces a core, which is 30 sa, which Rashi tells me is 1,500 amas by 50 amas. Because the Mishkan was 100, was 2 sa by 50. So this we have to times it by 15, right? Because that would be 1,500. Okay, so how much seed is used to produce for such a how much seed is needed for such a field? He says 4 sa. The grut switches it, the kabin, 4 kab. He switches the next one as well. Rabami Dilei Amar Shmeina sa on the core. Rabami himself says not 4 sa, but he says 8 sa, or 8 kab, according to the grut. It seems like for Rabami you need more seed. Rabami used more seed. Amar Leo Sabaler of Pama Braid the Rabba Baravua. This old man, which according to someone was according to a Tzaisus was Eliyahu Navi. He says to Rav Chama, the son of Rabba Baravua, who is father-in-law of Rav Nachman, he says, Azbralach, let me explain to you. Rabbi Yechanan, in the years of Rabbi Yechanan, Mishmeina the land was hardy. It would produce. It was rich, so you only needed a little bit of seed. It would fill up the whole thing. But when Rabami's days, the land was weak, so you needed double the amount of seed. Tanan Hasam. It's learned to taught over there. Let's say you're supposed to leave a certain amount. Supposed to leave the leket, the sheaves of the stalks that fall. You're supposed to leave it for the poor. It's 2 stalks that fall. But the problem over here is that the wind blew the bundles around, and now you don't know which stalks, how much stalks would have been left, or what's there. So I'm demaisa kama leket realasis. You have to now estimate how much leket this would have left and leave it for the poor. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that what you do is you measure how much seed you would need for the following year or for this year, and that's what you give to the poor. And that's going to be the amount of leket. But how much is that? Yes, Rav Dimi, Amar Rabbi Lazar, he came Rabbi Yechanan. Rav Dimi came. He said in the name of Rabbi Lazar, and some say in the name of Rabbi Yechon Abbas Kabin Lakur, that 4 kav for a core. Now, when he says 4 kav for a core, by Rabbi Yirmiyah has a question on this. Lakur zera or lakur tvua? Do you want to know? Are you talking about that I took a core of seed to plant, and I have to leave now 4 kav for that field that was planted with a core of seed, or are you talking about I planted it with whatever, but it grew a core? Now I have to leave 4 kav. What was planted or what grew? When we say the ratio there of the core, are we talking about how much was planted, a core of seed or a core of produce? And then the mapelas yada, the mapelas shvarim. It says if you say that it's referring to the seed, then is a core of seed meaning how much I plant by hand or how much I plant with the oxen? Because if I plant with the oxen, then it's much more waste. By hand, I can control. Tashema, so come let's dichias Ravan Amarabavua, Amarabelazar. When Ravan came, he said the name of Rabavua, name of Rabelazar, Rabbi Yechanan. Some say it was in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Abbas Kabbalah Zera. It's a core of seed. But we still don't know if is it Mapelas Yad or Mapelas Shvarim. Is it for Mapelas Yad, what was done by hand, or Mapelas Shvarim was sown by the oxen? Teku, we leave that as a question. Okay, let's leave the Gemara over here. We have the Shiva Minyan, right? Right now.
6:30.
Good Shabbos, everyone. It's a little confusing. Today's Friday, but it is.